Well, I would like to take this time to personally welcome you to the interview. Um, I also want to say that I am really pleased that you reached out to me, even though it seems like a year ago that we were speaking. It's still important to reach out to people, even a year later, because I'm always ready to talk to you. I'm always ready for the next interview. So, my first question, and after our telephone conversation earlier today, I know a little bit about you, but let's start with who is Daniel Malone?
All right, Aaron, thank you for asking me to share in this podcast.
My pleasure.
I'm always willing to do that because of where I've come from and where I am now. It's unbelievable to me that I've come this far. At times, I think that I still can't believe it. You know, I'm totally blind. I've been blind for over 40 years since 1979. But do you want the whole story, sir?
Yes, this is we are recording a whole episode on a whole podcast called Aaron's Opinion. So yes, give me the whole story.
Alrighty, alrighty. Um, my life, I was sighted until age 24. Large family, very meager beginnings, very poor. Grew up in a junkyard, and my dad, who everybody admired, kept us kids fed and tried to keep clothes on our back and tried to keep us warm. And at upstate New York, very cold, wintry, lake effect winters, and we couldn't stand them. But the point is, I grew up comparing myself to everybody else, and I bring this up because low self-esteem issues. Um, I didn't like who I was. We couldn't afford anything. I grew up like depressed and self-pity. And I come from a dysfunctional family with a lot of alcoholism. And with four older brothers, I just watched them to know what to do. I had no idea what I was going to do. So I watched them one at a time go into service, and a lot of trouble with alcohol and alcoholism. And so the first one went in the Army, second one Air Force, third one Marines. Third one Navy, and fourth one Marines. And my brother that was in the Marines went to Vietnam. He got killed accidentally. So I was scheduled to go in the Coast Guard, but I went blind instead. So, I tell that because when I picked up my first drink when I was like age 14, it wasn't just a solution, it was the solution to me. And I tell about my drinking days because it led me into very destructive pattern. And my brother that took me under his wing when my other brother died, he showed me how to go to bar and drink, and did a lot of that, a lot of playing pool, all that stuff, all the stuff a young teenager is not supposed to do. But I watched him, and he was in the hospital, in jail, DWIs. He's probably got the worst story I've ever heard as far as alcoholism. And I was deathly afraid of that. I was deathly afraid of that word. And so finally I had to detach from him. And I had to detach from him and go on my own. Well, drinking and driving doesn't mix. And at age 22, the day after Elvis Presley died, I took a buddy and I said, let's go. And before work, and for odd reasons, misunderstanding, I drank a whole lot. And I was on a motorcycle. And I was racing him on a motorcycle. And then I ended up hitting a car head on over 100 miles an hour. And I landed 160 feet away on the road, both legs shattered, the femur broke, collapsed lung, and I was dead, you know. And they didn't think I was going to live through the night, so they called the whole family. And both legs were in casts. Obviously, I lived, but I was in a body cast for a year and a half. And the reason I was in a body cast for a year and a half is because after 9 months in a body cast, learning how to get around, and as soon as I can get upright again, I got in the car and went up to the bar and started drinking again, because that's my nature. Yes, you know. And it wasn't long after that I was out there. Oh, because I was in a body cast for a year and a half, because I went out dancing after I got the cast off and broke my leg over again. So I think it's a little dysfunctional there, you know. But I was really messed up. Oh, I'm getting back to work. I get both casts off my legs. I'm walking with a walking cane. And my best friend passed away, my father. And we were getting the house ready for auction, my mother's house, and we decided to drink over it. And we're going down on the way to the cemetery. My brother was driving the car and I was a passenger. This was 2 years later, less than 2 years later after the first accident. And he missed a curve, hit a telephone pole at my door, and the car flipped end over end. And the engine came in and broke both my legs again. And the car was upside down and I was trapped in it for an hour and a half. And the battery broke over my face. So the battery, I said, burned the eyes out of my head. And so,
you know, I'm sitting here. I'm glad this podcast is marked as explicit, because holy shit. I mean, ooh la la.
yeah.
Holy moly.
So it took an hour and a half for them to get me out with the jaws of life. And they ordered no solution on saline solution on the ambulance. So they weren't even able to treat my eyes until 2 hours later in the hospital. So the next day, an eye doctor came in, and so the corneas and the whites were like literally burned off. The fluid is leaking out of both eyes. And what they did was put Eastman glue on my eyes so it could grow again, grow inside underneath the glue. And it took a month for that to grow off. And that was the most horrible experience. I wouldn't recommend it for anybody. But the point of this story is because I'm going to tell you how I hit bottom, but this wasn't it.
Oh my God.
I went to, I was in the bed, both legs are in traction, both legs are broken for a second time, and I'm blind, and I'm completely coherent. But these two men come in my room, I could see just a little bit. And one was my bone doctor, and the other one was my eye doctor. And they weren't talking to me because it was the second time I had an accident. I wasn't worth talking to, apparently. But I heard one of them say to the other one, "What do you think we ought to do with him?" And the other one says, "I think he's ready for a nursing home. He's not much good for society." And in one of my readings, there comes a point of pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. And I think this was it, because I wasn't even being listened to. And the other thing is, there was people coming to my room, my family, my sisters, my mother, and they were all crying. And I'm saying, "What the hell are you crying for? I'm the one that's hurt." I could not comprehend in the least, not in the least, that I was anything worth caring for. I had no idea. So anyway, my brother builds a wheelchair ramp. I come home in a wheelchair, both cast on my legs, and after an operation, they put a rod in my femur. And I come home and I'm missing all the old good times I used to have. But to cut to the quick here, I'm not gonna go every detail, but
You
I'm
can,
in a
you can tell all of the details you want, or you can tell what details you want to tell.
already. Well, I come home in a wheelchair, and it was my girlfriend at the time. She was taking care of me. Matter of fact, both accidents. She nursed me back to health, and that was dysfunction times two, I think, because it was spending a lot of time together, and she was taking care of me. And the strange thing is, she wanted to get married. And I said, okay, might as well. We got married. And so I'm recovering. I'm getting up on my feet again to get my cast off, get rid of the crutches. And obviously I can't go back to work yet. So we buy a house. But the thing is, 6 months after we got married, she went into deep, deep self-pity because she married a blind man. And the next 10 years of my life, I tried to fix something that was unfixable. There was no way I was going to fix this, but I tried my heart out because I stopped drinking. I became sober. And I went to a 12-step program that a lot of people, a lot of good fellowship, a lot of love and acceptance. And my story is mostly about acceptance. That's what I want to focus on here. But she went into deep self-pity, and it was at this time, it was about the time that computers were starting to come out. And I was going through so much turmoil at home with this dysfunctional relationship that I decided I had to be as independent as I can be. And one thing that really threatened her was when I heard about computers and how possible that they could be talking. And that perked my interest. And so we ended up buying a computer. I had no idea what to do with it. And then I heard that there's a deck talk and a program called JAWS, made by Henry Joyce, that can make computers talk. So with all this alone time, I start calling around for resources, and I found out that if you ask the Lions Club, if you got a good purpose that you want to improve yourself, they'll buy you the equipment. And the Lions Club bought me a deck talk for, I think, $1,000 back then in the early 80s. And my computer was talking. And by the way, I've got some angels in my life. And one of them was a guy that took an interest in me, my brother's friend. He was a whiz on computers, and he took an interest in me because I was blind. And my brother told him about this talking computer. I mean, possible talking. So he liked challenges. He came over and he hooked it up and he got it talking. And all it said was, I'm in the old DOS days, by the way, back in the 80s. And the only thing it would say is C:\\\. I could hit enter and C:\\\. And my brother came over, and the one that was driving in the accident I was blinded in. And I showed him, and I was showing him, and I said, listen to this. And it said C:\\. And so he sat down there for about 10 minutes, and I didn't know that he was making a batch file back then in those days. And he says, all right, type your name. So I got my nose right down on the keyboard, and I found the letter D, and I found the letter A, and I found the letter N. And he says, press enter. And I pressed enter, and the whole screen started talking all over the place. I couldn't believe it. It was reading the whole screen. And here's the magic of this sibling rivalry. I asked him with my mouth open, I says, how did you do that? And he told me the magic thing right here. He says, never mind, you don't need to know. Well, I tell you what, I dug in hard. With all this, I had a lot of alone time because my wife took the kids out, and I dug in hard, and I got the manuals out, and I started learning how to use JAWS and how to read and get on the internet. And I'll never forget my first email, what a miracle it was. It was an amazing miracle. And I had hope. I had hope that I could do something. And then when like I said, like I got sobered up, and a lot of support from a lot of people in the 12-step program. There's a lot of love and acceptance for who I was. And when I got there, I felt so unique because not only because of the alcoholism, but because I was blind. And I was the only blind guy in there. And I felt so unique just being there in the first place, besides being blind. So I didn't plan on coming back. And, every time I went home, they said, I'll pick you up tomorrow. And I'm saying, for what? I'm thinking for what? And there was nothing at home anyway. So I went to another meeting. And suddenly I went from being Dan the blind guy to just Dan. And I was loved and accepted for who I was. And this started the journey on the self-esteem. And I learned a really good lesson, how to get out of myself, because I still haven't talked about my bottom. My bottom was being in the house in a recliner with 2 casts on my legs and the crutches on the floor, and people around me wanting to get in. And it was the loneliest, hardest place I know. And I never, ever want to go there again, because I went to bed and woke up and I couldn't see anything. It was the most horrible thing. But I couldn't let anybody in, and I didn't know. So anyway, we're getting into, and here's a turning point. All this time I was coping. Through each accident, I planned to just sit there and let everything get better. And because I knew things were going to get better eventually. But one day my eye was hurting, it was all red. And I called my doctor's office, and he's on vacation, you got to go see Dr. Ching. So I went to Dr. Ching, and we got talking, and he's examining me, and I got around talking to him when I can see again, when he can fix my eyes. And he said, Dan, you're never going to see again. You're going to be blind for the rest of your life. This was like 3 years after the accident. I had no idea. It hit me like a ton of bricks, and thank God I was in the program with the support I had and the love and acceptance and the fellowship that I had, because I never would have got through that without that. And so I started digging in more and learned how to, with a computer. And after a while, my brother was calling me, asking me for advice. So I thought it was pretty cool. But anyway, the key is I learned how to share my experience, strength, and hope with other people. And I didn't know by just sitting there and sharing with them, I was helping them. I didn't know that. I was so self-centered. But you want to call it a spiritual awakening. I finally got out of myself, because I don't know, it was so painful to be there. And I was able to help other people just by doing that. And so I got pretty good at the computer. And then I went to work at a blind workshop, and I was getting real messy. I was talking to the guy. I said, how is it here? And he says, oh, it's good, but don't go into the tubing department. It's the worst place here. And so they give me this the qualifications, the testing. And the first place they put me is in the tubing department. And it was really a very growing experience for me, because very humbling. I made it up to like supervisor in that department, and they gave me a lot of blind people to work with. I've got to work with hot glycerin. That's 380 degrees. Very, very dangerous job. And very, very razor sharp knives we have to cut tubing with. But the one day he said, you're going to train Charlie. I said, Charlie who? Charlie, and they told me, and Charlie is blind and deaf. And all of a sudden I had to learn sign language to talk into his hand. And I had to guide him and train him how to do this job. Very dangerous job. And I got burned once, not bad, but a very dangerous job, but a very growing experience for me. I call it humbling. But meanwhile, I'm getting so good on the computer. They just started to bring computers into the agency, but nobody knew how to use them. And I told my boss, I said, I got one just like this at home. He said, really? Why don't you get on it? And so I started playing around with it, and got to the point where they made me planner scheduler. So I was working with Access and Excel, and I was doing an inventory sheet, planning products for the whole agency three weeks out, with a big, huge database. That was pretty good. But the one thing I always wanted to do was to be able to teach computers. And I worked there for 23 years, and I found out after I left, they don't allow blind people to become staff members. So anyway, we leave there, and I moved to Florida. And when I get a new wife, okay, and we moved to Florida, and she's working, and I'm just relaxing, retired. I'm young retired. And so I'm looking on the internet one day for a blind agency, and I called them up, and the director answered. And she says, what can I do for you? And I says, well, my name is Dan. I says, you got anything for a blind person to do? I said, I don't know. Who are you? And I told her. And she says, why don't you come in? We'll talk. And we went in and I talked. And I told her that I can, I'm very good at JAWS and other programs. And she said, how would you like to volunteer? And I says, okay. She said, you're going to teach the teachers. And so I went in for like 4 weeks, and I was teaching the teachers how to teach the sighted teachers how to teach blind people. And after 4 weeks, she called me in and she says, how would you like a teaching job? And this is what I wanted all in the first place. And it all came from sharing my experience, strength, and hope with others. And I got a job as a technology instructor. And they admitted, they gave me the hard ones. Multiply handicapped, brain damaged. But it was very, very rewarding. I have a lot of patience. And I was doing everything from teaching email, computers, and Windows 7 at that time. Typing, a lot of typing and stuff like that. But so I'm a totally different person than what I was. But I tell you what, I feel like I'm better off blind than I was when I was sighted. I knew I was living a lie and on a downhill run. And I can't believe my outlook today, because it was all done by design, I feel. I think that, I believe in a higher power that takes care of me, and he put people and things in front of me for me to do, and it just a lot of doors opened. And I can't believe I came out of the bondage I was in. It was total bondage. The thing is, I'd like to give a spark of hope to anybody that might be listening, because I was there. I've been there, done that. I had no hope. I was hopeless and helpless. And it was very, very low. And it doesn't have to be that way. So that's why on my website, I call Blindness is Not the End. And it doesn't have to be. But I've learned when I was a kid, out of like 8 people in the household, it seems like I was the only one that had to do dishes. And I hated it. I hated every minute of it. But my mother had a lot of discipline. But I think about that. And then when I was in the bed, I think about when I was in the bed and lights and traction and blind, wishing that I could be doing that. And now I thank God that I'm able to stand in front of the sink and able to do the dishes. And really, I don't mind doing the dishes at any time at all. I came home from a meeting one night. I had put laundry in the washer, and I forgot when I got home from the meeting, like 9 to 10 o'clock, I put the clothes in the dryer. Or no, not in the dryer. I took them out of the washer, and I'm out there at midnight hanging the clothes in the line. I said, this is pretty strange, but it doesn't matter. I don't need the light to hang clothes in the yard. But I have a lot of stories about, I've been dealing with other people's fear of my blindness for 40 years. And my wife has a harder time with it than I do. I still do a lot of things. I do a lot of mechanical stuff. When I had my workshop, now this is a story I'd like to share. This is powerful because when I was blind and casts and crutches, the phone was ringing in the kitchen, one of the black phones hanging on the wall. And I got up as fast as I could get to it. It was my Uncle Bill. And I said, yes, Uncle Bill, what can I do for you? And he says, Danny, you think you can change the brakes on my car? And my first thought was, do you know who you're talking to? A blind lame man? That's what I thought. But I didn't. What I said was, why don't you pick up pads and bring them out? And he picked up the brake pads and brought them out. And I went down to my garage and opened the door. And I always had everything organized in there. And he'd know nothing about mechanics at all. So he brought his car in, and I had him sit there, and I jacked up the car and took the wheels off, the hubs and calipers, and I put the brake pads back in and tightened it up and put the tires back on, tightened them up. And I said, try it on, Uncle Bill. And he went down the road, and he came back. He said, Danny, they work great. How much do I owe you? And I said, you don't owe me anything, Uncle Bill. And he says, thanks a lot, Danny. And he took off. Well, that opened up a door for me. There's a scripture that says, I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. And I had everything so organized in my workshop, in my garage. My brother had brought over a car, and he asked me, Danny, can I change an engine in my car? And I said, yeah, as long as you do it quick, because I don't want it hanging around my yard. And it was in my driveway, and the engine was in the lawn. And after Uncle Bill left, I knew that he wasn't going to come do it. So I'm looking around, and I take a couple chains, and I take my chain hoist, and I hook them up to the engine, and I drag it in to the garage, and I lift it up. And then I got my crutches, and I put the car, it was on level ground, so I put the car, I backed it up, and I steered it and pushed it back in. And I got it under the engine, and I dropped it down in, and I hooked up the motor mounts. It took me about 2 days, motor mounts in the transmission and radiator, battery, and got everything hooked up except the distributor. And then I put the distributor in backwards. I didn't know that because I had to put the wiring in, and I remember the wiring order from the old junkyard days. So I go to start up the car, and it just goes pop, 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 pop. And I said, I got a distributor in wrong. You can do that with the old Plymouth Valiants, And so I went and took the cap off, and I turned the distributor around and put it in, and put the cap back on, and I turned the key, and the engine started up. And my brother drives in the driveway, not knowing that I did this. And he says, who put the engine in there? I says, I did. And he helped me put the hood on, and he got his wife, and they drove it off. And I found out that the only limits I have are between my ears. And I found out that the only thing I can't do is drive. I can drive, but not very good. But they won't let me drive. They won't give me my license back because I am totally blind. Okay. Meanwhile, after my eyes looked like a monster for all those years, a lot of years. But thank God I got prosthesis now. My eyes died because of the optic nerves, and my prosthesis are not full eyeballs. They're just like really thick. They're like probably a quarter inch thick. And I don't look like I'm blind at all. They're beautiful. I used to have green eyes. Now they're blue, and they move. When I move my eyes, they move along with them. So I don't even look blind. So a lot of people don't know I'm blind until they interact with me, and it doesn't mind. A lot of people, I tell them I'm blind, and they apologize all over the place. I said, "Don't be sorry." I said, "I'm doing fine. I'm doing great." And so it's really been an adventure, and I'm really glad to share my experience, strength, and hope. You got any questions, Aaron?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have questions. You're just such a magnificent speaker. Every episode, the speakers, the guests that I have from around the world just keep getting better and better and more meaningful. And I was listening to you. I was listening to every word. They're words that I need to hear, and every word that the public needs. Everyone needs to hear these words of experience, strength, and acceptance from you. First question: has anyone told you that you have a really magical voice and that you should be on the radio or should have your own podcast? Because you just have the most magical podcasting voice that I could easily listen to for several hours a day. I just love the way you were telling those powerful and meaningful stories. Your voice is just magnificent for telling stories.
Thank you.
By the way,
Mhm.
so I'm much younger than you. I'm a kid. I'm 30 years old. I don't know if you picked up on that or not. I don't know if you thought I was older or younger, but I only have one age. I'm 30. And I was born blind. I was born with glaucoma, and I cannot really understand what it must be like to have to go through all of those, quite frankly, all of those horrific things that you have just detailed and laid out. But what you have said about really tying it all together into the life lesson is that basically, on one hand, we all have an Achilles heel, but on the other hand, the sky's the limit. And that's really the most important message that you could ever give someone. I see I see a lot of messages around Facebook and around social media, and I'm sure you're in the various support groups like me. After all, with everything, after all, if you can fix a car, you can probably use Facebook. So I'm sure you've seen that, the younger generation of blind people, in my opinion, have very low self-esteem. And certainly this episode is explicit and is not for children, just like all my episodes are not. But what advice do you have for all these disgruntled young blind guys and girls who are just really, really, really struggling, and they haven't even been through, half the hell and back that you have in your life? To what do you advise?
Yeah, I'd like to. I went to a seminar once that said on the chalkboard, they told me it was on there, total self-expression. And I was never able to do that. And when I found out my self-esteem was so low, I was lower than a rock. And like I told you, when I went into the fellowship and got accepted and loved by these other people, and I became Dan instead of the blind guy, it was really powerful. And I started sharing my experience, strength, and hope, and started feeling better about myself. But the spiritual awakening that I'm talking about is like I'm sticking my head through the darkest black cloud you could ever imagine, and sticking my head above it and seeing the sunshine for the first time. And it was absolutely wonderful that I could get out of myself and help other people. But the thing is, I had to come to a point of surrender. I had to give up the self-wants, the self-pity, the self. When you're hurt, it deals with self. And when you get to a point of serving others, that's actually an upside down spiritual principle. Because when you're helping others, you're actually helping yourself. You don't know that at the time. Um, but I call it surrender, acceptance, and gratitude. Those three stages. I surrendered my self-pity, my self-doubts, I accepted, I accepted myself because these other people accepted me. God put them in my life, I feel. They put them in my life. And so that they loved me until I could love myself, basically. And then after like 5 years, I'm sitting around there trying to figure out what's the answer, what's the answer, what's the answer. And here's the answer I come up with. It's gratitude. Gratitude is the ultimate key for a starting point. And believe me, being so depressed and such self-pity, it really sucks to be there. And turning that around, when I had a point of gratitude was when I was in a deep state with the support of others. I had a starting point to get better. And like I said, I dug in the computer. I thank God that we're living in this day and age with this technology. I know you young people are like born with it. You're so used to it. You know much more than I do on the iPhones and stuff. But I used to teach iPhones, as a matter of fact. But technology nowadays, I just thank God that we're in this day and age that we can have this technology. Kids probably don't know this now, but back in the 20s and 30s, I heard they put blind people in mental institutions because they didn't know what to do with them. I can't imagine, and now we can share with each other. And the benefits we have in America, it's just a wonderful place to live. And I'm so grateful that everything that it seems like God has taken my life and put me on a path and just shown me what to do and put the things in front of me I need to do. So, I got 1 foot in yesterday and 1 foot tomorrow. I'm gonna piss on today. So I try to stay in today, in the moment, and do what's in front of me. And I like to help other people. I'm still helping some of my old students, even though I'm retired. And I share a lot on my webpage. I have a couple different conference call groups I host and let others host, and I'm able to write my web pages now. I'm still working on them, but it's beyond my wildest dreams. Mm-hmm.
You sure. Beautiful. Now, okay, moving towards more to today. All right. So, what can you tell us about the websites you host? The web pages themselves. What do you do?
Well, my main web page is just blinddan.com. BLINDDAN.
Yeah, right, and you can click the link in the description and all of that. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a work in progress. I'm still working on that. I have blind resources on there and funny stories, a lot of blind stories, and I have audio only TV shows, the old TV shows, my favorites, and just a lot of stuff on there. And dedications to my brother that died in Vietnam and my wife, and my writings and stuff like that. Like I said, total self-expression. I'm able to do this freely now, and it's wonderful to be able to express myself in a healthy, happy way. It's in the program. We say that if you're halfway painstaking about these steps, you will have life beyond your wildest dreams. And that's where I've come to. And sometimes I have to pinch myself. But anyway, I host 2 1-hour conferences. Well, I have other people host them now. I got the websites up there. One's called Blind Faith. And that's for anybody that there's blind people and sighted people in it. And that's for anybody that wants to share their problems. You don't have to be any specific disease or anything like that. You can just be anybody you want. So that's at blindfaith.group, BLINDFAITH.GROUP. And that's a good group of people. And the other one is a dedication book. It's on my webpage. I mean, it's a daily reading book. We read one page, and that's on Monday nights. We read one page, and then we discuss it with scriptures, and that we're getting a lot out of that too. So it's very rewarding.
That's excellent. And have you gotten to speak to people from other countries on your groups?
Not yet, but when I was playing cards, I was on. I was playing cards online. I love to play euchre and hold'em and all that, and Yahtzee. The website's down now, but I was talking to people. I mean, playing with people around the world: England, Africa, South America, Canada, all over the United States. Made a lot of connections around the world with people. Yeah.
That's really good. That's really excellent. So, how many other podcasts have you been on?
And this is number one.
Really?
Mhm.
Wow, wow. As I say before, the way you tell your story is so meaningful. You really own. It's really clear to me that you really own your life. You really own your story. It's really yours. Just by the way you tell it. You really mean it, and that's something that I think podcasters should look up to. You know, um, I am so glad that you noticed my message on Messenger. But a year ago, when I had reached out to you, had you ever? I mean, I'm just curious. Like, had you ever heard of Aaron's Opinion? Have you ever, perused my catalog and looked at my content at all?
Well, I'm sorry. I had not. That's the first I've heard of it. No.
Okay, okay. Well,
Mhm.
I'll tell you a little bit. A little bit. You've done such a great job of talking. I'll talk for a little bit here to
I'm
let you
ready.
take a sip. Let you take a sip of coffee or whatever you have there. You know, um, I, as I said, I'm 30 years old. I have glaucoma. I also have a congenital heart defect. Heart defect. But anyway, a couple years ago, I was listening to podcasts in the blindness community, and I noticed that they just were not, in my opinion, they really were not open to guests from around the world, and they really were not really receptive, in my opinion, to my perspective on life in a lot of ways. So, I'm a teacher. I work online, and if I'm not teaching, I'm podcasting because I just love to talk and love to educate and talk and talk and talk. Well, I figured out, gee, if you push record, you can tell other people what you think, and then maybe something will grow out of it. Well, next thing I know, a podcast pops up, a YouTube. Now I'm on the radio. So over time, when you practice these things, it develops into a product that I really hope will help other people. If I can help you, then I helped a million others. And that's kind of my slogan, that I say here at Aaron's Opinion: help one person today, help a million tomorrow. Because it's true. It's true. As long as we help one person, we're helping a million others.
I
And
am so glad
that's,
about it. Great. It's great.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And it's true. And it's true. And I've seen it because somehow the fact that someone saw my message from a year ago, I don't know. You know how you were saying in your story how things kind of happen for a reason, everything falls into place and things are put before you for certain reasons. Well, today was the day that I was supposed to interview Daniel Malone. That this
Mhm.
day, not one day earlier nor one day later, was it supposed to happen on this day for whatever
Yeah.
reason. It's kind of cool to think about that, kind of magical. What's so special about this day? Well, I don't know, but it's special. So that's kind of my perspective on life. I mean, I'll tell you, I I mean, I do have, like all people do, I do have my concerns about society, about the way that blind people's attitude in society from my generation. We still have a huge barrier of discrimination, in my opinion, although you probably have a slightly different opinion of that. But I still think that we have a lot of problems, even in this great country, with discrimination in society and things. So I think some of these problems that we're having today are going to really come back to, really, really affect us in the future. So
Yeah.
But I don't know where all of this is going, but I do know that you absolutely should start a podcast where you tell your story. If not that, you should write a book. I hope you've written a book, right?
Well, I've had my story published from like, how many years ago? 1994. I've got it
Hmm.
on the I've got it on the website, Dan's story. But I was thinking about writing a book. Yes, I was, and I just keep putting it off. So I'd like to tell you one story about
Please do.
what me and after I had to take a bus to connect to another bus, so I had a 45-minute wait up at Midtown in the city, and so and I sat on the bench in the mall, and I always fold up my cane and I sit on it. I put it under my right thigh, and like I said, I don't look blind. And this guy come up and sat next to me, and he says, "Hi, how you doing?" I said, "Pretty good. How you doing?" We were chit chatting about the weather and everything, and I hear this cane tapping coming down on the other side of him, and he tap 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 tap, and he said, "Look at that poor blind SOB." He said, "They shouldn't even be out in public. They're going to get hurt or hurt somebody with that cane or something." And it was about time for my bus to come. So I stood up and opened my cane. And I looked at him. I says, "It ain't so bad." And I walked away. I wish I could have seen his face.
Yeah, that's kind of a cool story. That's cool. That's cool. That's kind of some ironic blind. That's kind of some in both directions. That's definitely self-deprecation, is what that's called. It's definitely some
Yeah,
self-deprecating humor for sure. That's funny.
yeah, yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. When you were talking about you going through your stories there in life, I can just tell that you're a lot older than me just based on the way that the doctors were talking. I mean, if a doctor today said that, oh, they should be in an asylum, they should be,
Yeah.
put away. Nowadays, it would just be professionally inappropriate. I mean, a doctor
Oh,
could.
yeah.
I
Yep.
mean, I'm not going to say out loud that a doctor would lose their medical license, but they could definitely get a nasty letter. So it would be bad. But look, you know, by no means am I justifying what that doctor said to you. I'm not. But the fact is, you know, history teaches us everything, and the fact is that history a long time ago, certain things were socially acceptable that are just not socially acceptable today. So by saying what they said then, they might not have meant it they may not have realized how bad that was at that time. It was just simply socially acceptable,
Yeah. Yeah.
at that time, in that time period. Yeah. And we
Yeah.
still have stories about people with disabilities being, put in institutions overseas all the time. Um, it's happening less and less, but still in some of the, Eastern European countries and some in a lot of parts of the world, disabled people end up in that situation even today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
it's a big
that's
problem.
tough. Well, but one other story about that bus ride. The bus was late one day, getting me to the connecting bus, and I'm really getting anxious because if I miss that bus, I missed the only bus that's going out 22 miles. So finally, the bus comes and gets me up to Midtown, and as fast as I can, I get off the bus with my cane and I'm tap 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 around the corner and trying to catch this other bus. And all of a sudden, the guy grabs my arm, takes my arm, and he says, "Brother, Jesus can heal you." I says, "I know, but right now I'm late for a bus." Yeah. And
that's
again,
that's my sense of humor. That's definitely my sense of humor. Yeah.
and then again, he says, "Brother, Jesus can heal you." And I said, "Yes, I believe you, brother, but I think he already has." Yeah. And I tell that story when I'm speaking, and people that come up to me afterwards, "Did you catch the bus?" I said,
That's
"Yes,
not
I
that
caught
that's not the
the bus."
point. Yeah, but
Yeah, I know.
yes.
But I'm 3.5 inches shorter because of breaking both legs twice.
Hmm.
And because of my eyes, they really didn't set them or anything. They just put cast on them and they healed the way they did. That's why I'm 3.5 inches shorter than I was. But by a miracle of all miracles, last night, we went to a Beatles tribute concert and I was up there dancing. I can still
Oh yeah.
dance. Yeah, yeah. Why not? You know?
Why not? Why not? Absolutely, why not?
Mhm.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. And I'm over twice your age. I'm 66 years old, by the way.
Well, I could tell you were at least that age because
Yeah,
simply because of the stories, the time period, and the stories you were telling.
yeah,
But I don't know. Because I'm 30, I'm sure that. I mean, I don't know all of the details of all of the stories, but I'm sure my parents went through similar things when I was a boy in the 90s, dealing with society, because society in the 90s was totally different from society today. So there were
yeah,
still the strange things that occurred. I'm sure of it. I just don't know of it, you know.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that's really good. That's really, really, really fascinating. So and okay, so are you like on YouTube? Do you ever put up any YouTube videos about your
Oh,
story or?
I haven't, yes, no, not about my story, but I put up a YouTube video about my stand. Um, I, my creativity came out too, because with the iPhone and using all these apps that read documents, I was in the hardware one day and I bumped into this piece of plastic and it was a molding, corner molding. And I just thought you know what? I could make a stand out of this. That was years ago. And what I did was I created a portable device stand. And I started putting things together in my workshop and got a drill press and started putting one together so it would hold the phone in the air, like 13 inches in the air. And I got it pretty much perfected now, and I've sold about 200 of them. But what it does is it just suspend your phone in the air, and you use Seeing AI or KNFB reader or a voice stream scanner, and you can read documents. Just so I can take my whole pile of mail and put my phone on the stand and just put my mail underneath it, and I sorted a whole pile in 15 minutes. And I can take these and document them in my phone and send them to myself in email and all that good stuff. It's great little tool. So you don't have to hold the iPhone. I mean, you can. There's other stands out there, but I've got that's on my website too. It's called iPhone Stand. So, and I sell them on there too.
Mm-hmm. All good. All good to know. So I'm sure that you have many questions for me. In fact, I hope you would have many more questions for me than I would have for you. So what do you want to know about me?
Well, you said you've been blind all your life.
Correct.
When people ask me that, I said not yet. So all right.
Never heard. That's good. That's good. You know what? You know what? That's usable material. That's
Yeah.
usable. That's a good. That's good. I'm gonna use that material.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
It's true. It's true. In other words, they want to ask, "Were you born blind?" Is what they really want to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But they're too afraid to ask that, so they say, "Have you been blind your whole life?" Well, not yet.
Yeah. Have you have you ever seen colors?
Well, I mean, I have light perception, so I'm able to perceive all color, I guess. Um, so I have usable vision, but with glaucoma, and the way my eyes are, everyone's eyes are different, but the way my eyes are, vision comes, goes. fluctuates around, based on the pressure and things like that. So I'm
Yeah.
sure I'm seeing color, and I'm sure I'm not seeing color. I'm sure that there are things that I'm not even aware of. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a couple things that are fascinating to me is I was in a seminar one time with a meditation, rainbow meditation, and I sponsored a guy that was totally blind from birth, and he's never seen colors. And during these meditations, you're supposed to imagine these colors. And he asked me, "What does red look like?" And I said, "Hold an apple? I don't know." You know, I had to try to describe what yellow, red, green, blue looks like. It was just like totally different, because I've seen colors. I used to drive. I used to see 20/20 vision. And another thing is about there was a deaf people I worked with too, and there was a question posed to deaf people at the Institute of the Deaf, and they said, if you had a choice, would you rather be blind or deaf? And the deaf people said, I'd rather be blind because blindness separates you from things, but deafness separates you from people. And that's a really good point, you know. The two totally blind and deaf people I worked with at the Blind Association. Of course, I can't see anything, and people started giggling. I said, "What's going on?" And Charlie and Pauline were having like an argument, finger signing. Um, they were disagreeing on something, but they were both totally blind and totally deaf. And I really grew getting to know these people, you know. So very humbling, very humbling. But anyway, we're talking about you now, aren't we? Sorry.
Quite all
Are you
right.
married? Do you have married? Do you have kids?
No, no, and no.
No.
At the moment, I live with my parents and my brother. Hmm.
Okay.
We've been a little, of course, as we all have around the world, we've been a little delayed because of the pandemic and the stress of that. Um, Quite frankly, it's not fair to go back in history, but if the pandemic hadn't happened, I probably would be out on my own by now, maybe. But, because of that, everything, we've been kind of delayed by it. We've been kind of slowed down by that and things like that. So, yeah. Hmm.
Well, I try to live by principles, one day at a time. Easy does it. First things first, and don't get ahead of yourself. So, I think that God knows exactly what He's doing. There's two things you got to know about God. There is one, and I'm not it. You know.
It's an incredibly wise thing. That's a brilliant point. Absolutely. It's exactly my sense of spirit and my sense of humor and my sense of being. So
Yeah.
you're absolutely right about that. Or the other famous thing that, of course, the great philosopher Samuel Clemens would tell us is there are only 2 days in life that are important: the day we're born and the day we know why. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
those are the only 2 days that are important. Apart from those 2 days, we have death and taxes. But
Yeah.
outside of
Yeah.
all of that, you have to have faith, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Patient. Do what's in front of you. Yeah. Mhm. I call it going left foot, right foot. Do what's in front of you.
Do what's in front of you. All right. All right.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's really cool. That's really really cool. Well, I tell you what. Do you have one final question to really make me sweat to see if I'm worth my salt as a podcaster? One final question.
All righty. One final question to make you sweat, huh?
Oh yeah. I've heard it all, so I'm really counting on you making me sweat.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm really happy that you are getting out of yourself and you're helping other people with these podcasts, and it's given me a new enlightenment.
Well, there. You know what? As long as I helped you, then I helped a million others. So thank you.
Yes, Yes. Well, I respect what you're doing. Thank you very much.
Dan, I respect you too. I really learned a lot from that. You are always welcome here at Aaron's Opinion. I loved learning from you in this episode. That was incredible. We'll leave it there. Know that you are always forever welcome here on Aaron's Opinion.